Hey guys, welcome back to the Uncle You Needed. I've been thinking about doing a video on cars, and then I happened to see this pop up on Reddit. What car did you drive at 2530? What car did you want at the time? So let's jump into this a little bit. I'm actually not a huge car guy, but there are some things that obviously dealing with cars over the years, that come to mind. First off, I'm assuming that you probably live in somewhere where you have to have a car like I do. If you're in a major metropolitan area, you don't have to have a car to commute. Definitely some pros to that. Things that you don't have to mess with. They tend to be more expensive with real estate, but still, you don't have to deal with the extra expense or maintenance of a car. But anyway, here's some of the things that came to mind about cars. So one is particularly that age, right? Like maybe 20 to 30, 25 to 30, new versus used. So, you can go buy a new car. You've probably got a pretty decent payment, a pretty hefty one at that. And depending on how long you finance it, there's always going to be that possibility of repair work while you still have a payment. And that's a giant pain in the balls, is when you've got, say $700-800 going out a month already with a car payment. And then you take it in to get the repair shop done. And that's, that can be tons of money, but let's just say $3,000. It's a pain in the butt. And, I've been there, and that's something that's, not fun to deal with. On a used vehicle, repairs are almost guaranteed that you're going to have to deal with that at some point. So, it's kind of like 6 1 half dozen. At this point with where I am in life and kind of understanding, a little bit better about understanding cars and kind of what to look for, trucks, used vehicles, I'd probably go the used route and just sock away a bit of money each month in the case that I had to have a repair or some maintenance come up. Another piece of this that definitely weighs heavily on that is doing some online research as far as finding a good mechanic, because there's always that argument for taking it to the dealership, in that they're going to know the vehicle, right? They're going to be able to fix it. Sometimes you go to these smaller places and you really don't know what their expertise is. There are some guys that, maybe went to school for it, some guys that didn't, maybe some guys, only worked on one make and they're kind of struggling with something specific to you. Maybe you have a European model, maybe you're US and they only worked on Japanese. I don't know, but just, that's always something to consider. So, do some research and find yourself a mechanic beforehand. If you are going to go the used route, would be one piece of advice. Lease versus buy. So in my experience, almost always buy. I know there's some use cases where a lease will probably make sense. I'll try to jump into one. I know that financial people almost always tell you to lease because it's a depreciating asset. But here's the deal, or my experience, because I actually leased one at one point. You're still going to have a decent amount due at signing, right? And you see that like on those ads I do for leases, $3-4 grand, $5 grand due at signing. You've got your payment. You got nothing at the end. You're just giving the vehicle back. But here's probably the most, the piece in there that you really have to watch out for is you're responsible for the maintenance or any repair work. And then when they get that thing back, they allow for what is referred to as like normal wear and tear. But man, if you get somebody ding the hell out of a door, things like that, and it was like, maybe more of a dent type thing, you're still gonna have to take care of that stuff, hopefully through your insurance, but that's still going to be an expense. So it's basically like you have all this money out the door and then really nothing at the end. And then you can still be on the hook, depending on what the end of lease person sees, they try to make you take care of. So to me, it's just a lot of anxiety for not a lot you get out of it. One of the cases where a lease may make sense is if you actually ended up upside down on a car. That's a way to sometimes you can roll those into a lease, get something different. And then when you pay it off, the kind of negative equity that's already factored into your lease payment. That's one reason to do it, possibly. And then another is that, if I was just thinking about driving, maybe if you had a situation where you had a car in another city, you weren't there as often, so you're not putting a lot of miles on it, but you needed, you had like maybe apartment or a condo there, and you needed a way to get around more frequently than, say, Uber. But so it made sense to have a vehicle, but you didn't want to like maintain the thing long term and you wanted to give it back. That's like another kind of edge case where I could see you doing a lease. But once again, I think for most people, it's almost always going to be better just to buy it. Even though it's depreciating, you'll have something to deal with, for in the used market when you're done. And like I said, it's for me, even besides that, it's just not having to deal with if something, a bunch of other expenses when you're trying to just turn it back in. So that's my thoughts on that. Here's something I would look into now, knowing what I know now, is 2 used vehicles, right? So maybe a 10 to 20K total investment, reliable. So, both in the type of vehicle that you chose, one that's been maintained, fairly cheap to maintain. You don't have to do them at once. So you don't necessarily go buy 2 the same day, but like maybe 1 year you get one and then the next year you add on another vehicle. And this could come in different realms, right? But like kind of some use cases I've got down here, a truck and an SUV is probably what I would do. Pickup truck so that you have the ability to put stuff in the back and haul things and also pull, right? So if you had a boat, you've got that covered. If you need to put dirt or whatever you're putting in the back, you've got that opportunity to do so. But then I'd probably also get like maybe a Jeep Grand Cherokee so that I had something that was basically like a sedan. I'm not a real car guy. I don't like being down low. Probably go get like one of those, but get one that was used and, that had been maintained decently well. And then have those. So it does a couple of things. One, you don't have to necessarily drive, a truck going like if you're going from suburb into city for a commute isn't always the best. Same time, you've got the use for that. But then also, if one of them goes down and does actually need to have some repair work done that you can't do by yourself, you've got another vehicle there. So you're not just stranded, struggling for car rental, Uber, a friend, whatever. You've just got some other options. That's something I would look into. And taking it a step further, let's say, you found a truck for, I don't know, 10. Granted, it's going to have high miles on it. But like I said, if you had one that had been decently maintained and you could, put a little more money into it over time, typically, you're probably going to have some issues with the interior a bit. Maybe you can get the seats redone or put new covers on those. Go get it detailed, things like that. Just over time, kind of put a little bit more money into it and make it nicer. And then, maybe spend another 10 on, like I said, that next year, a Jeep, once again, probably over 100K miles. These days, getting a vehicle with over 100K miles would not stress me out at all. The engines and the oil technology and all that kind of stuff, it's just gotten so good that those things last. I think there was a time where once you hit 100K, your vehicle is basically shot. But or maybe just the maintenance expenses start to get so high. That hasn't been my experience, so it wouldn't stress me out to do that. Another alternative you could do, like maybe get one vehicle and then say have a fun vehicle like a convertible. Probably would be my route. Like I said, I'm just not a huge car guy, but something that you could do, and that's something I would look into in this scenario. You probably don't have a payment. So that's one good thing. Like I said, you got some redundancy if you had a vehicle go down and you needed to just drive your other to work for a little while. Like I said, you put a little bit more money into it over time. You'll make them a little bit nicer, but that's something I would look into. Things to know on vehicles. So one is like a basic of just how to change your oil. You can definitely go down and get it done at the quick lube places. Some of those have some specials where they're pretty cheap. Sometimes almost cheaper than what you can go buy it for, which is cool. So that's an option, but I would still know how to at least change it. You may find a point in your life where just to cut down on expenses, you do it yourself. Get a couple of ramps, go down to Walmart and get your oil and your filter and do it yourself. So I know there were points in my life where I definitely did that. How to diagnose check engine codes. Okay. This one is absolutely essential. Okay. And I guarantee you'll save you thousands of dollars. And here's why. If you really have no clue about cars, and many of us don't, you didn't go to mechanic school or, get raised doing that. You can get that check engine light on or something pops up. You start getting these warnings and stuff. If you take that into the dealership or to a mechanic cold, and you've got no freaking clue what's going on, they can tell you basically anything and often will, right? If you get a check engine light, take this into any of the auto parts stores like O'Reilly's or AutoZone or whatever's local to you. They will come out and use this little reader for free. There's a little input station right underneath your steering wheel. They will plug into that, and they're going to give you an engine code. And then what you can do is they can probably tell you right then some of the information, but you at least have the opportunity to take that engine code onto your phone or computer and figure out what that means. And you might find out that it's just not much at all. To give you a specific example, I had this happen one time on a vehicle I had, and the engine code, it was just on this particular fuse that condensation from the fan in the engine would get down in, and it would tend to burn out this fuse. And I found this posted on a forum after Googling this engine code. I changed out that fuse, which was like $5. Problem solved. Engine light went off. Wasn't an issue. Had I taken that into a dealership, who freaking knows what they would have told me? Who knows? But I probably would have been spending $3,000 for a $5 fuse. So 100% do that. Understand that process. Okay. Diagnose check engine codes. Keep a basic set of automotive tools. So these are the ones with like, wrenches and sockets and things like that, because that's what you're going to need to do anything on your vehicle. This gets back to the one above. You may find, I had another one. It was on a Jeep that I had, and I can't recall exactly what it was, but it was this piece that kind of screwed into, it was like a sensor, screwed into the engine or at some point. And there was this little electrical sensor piece that came out of that. Anyway, that had gone bad, and it was causing problems. I can't remember if it was like a rough idle or something like that. But anyway, once again, had to, one of those Google search things after an engine, some sort of code that clued me into it. Figured out that was the issue. Just needed a basic set of tools to be able to socket that thing out. Changed it myself. Once again, part was probably $20, and then you're done. Problem solved. So have some tools that you can make some basic repairs on your own. And then just what I was saying before, search on YouTube, which is probably what you do for most things anyway these days, like we all do. But, figure out how to go on there, watch a tutorial on if someone is doing it right. A couple of pieces of advice on that. Make sure that don't always check the first tutorial that you see. See who's putting it out. If it's like an auto parts manufacturer, if it's, some big brand, it's usually pretty decent. But definitely check the comments below. YouTube had you could see both upvotes and downvotes. And I kind of had a rule of thumb of like 10%. If it was over 10% in downvotes, I usually pass on it because there's enough problems in the video. People are trying to let you know. Now you can't see that, but you can still read the comments below and just take a quick look down there to see, hey, is this, are people responding thank you, or are they saying, hey, this isn't working, or you should, in some cases even you should take this down. So take a look at who's putting it out and then what the comments are underneath. Some things to keep in your vehicle: and appropriate size jack, and possibly jack stands. So this is obviously if you have a flat. I have almost always had a full-size truck, half-ton truck, and I don't know if they used to do this, but these days I would say that the jack stands, they put a jack in there to basically say, yes, we have a jack. But I know that I could not get my truck jacked up. The last time I had a flat, I could not get it jacked up high enough to get the wheel off. So maybe it was, I had an upgraded wheel size, and they put on like the stock. The jack is okay for the stock wheel size, but I went out and bought a jack that would actually let me get this thing up off the ground, and it still fit in the back underneath the seat, no problem. But make sure you've got something that works. The jack stands are it's just a stand. You put it underneath, a vehicle or a trailer, and it just keeps it up, and it's meant to hold weight. The reason I say this is that this would make me more secure than just having the jack up there. If it's taking you a while to get the tire off, they're cheap, and like I said, they're meant to hold weight, especially if let's say you needed to get back in the vehicle for some reason during changing it, just things like that. A jack is meant to just lift something up, not necessarily to hold it for a long period of time. I used to have jack stands when I had a boat too, and I'd put the jack stand underneath the front of it. So instead of that little wheel that you see, holding up those boat trailers, I put a jack stand under there, so that way it just had a little more support. Spare, the reason I mentioned this seems obvious, but back to that comment about used. So if you buy a used vehicle, you may not have one. I would just double check just to make sure, especially like on trucks, because on trucks and pickups, they're underneath a lot of times. So you're not seeing it. Just check and make sure you've got some sort of spare. Even on a full size truck, you typically have a full size spare, but even a donut's gonna be better than nothing. So just make sure you got some sort of spare back there. Ratchet straps. This is just, there's so many reasons why you could need one. If you have a car, I don't know, the trunk won't latch for some reason, you can strap it down. If you need to put something on, if you had a car, putting it on top of the car, if for some reason you had to, not recommended, but if you had to. Of course, if you have a truck, there's so many reasons, you keep things down on the bed of the truck without flying out. But this is one of those things where I use those just all the time. So I would keep a pair of ratchet straps. Jumper cables, you never know when you're going to need to jump, or you can help somebody else out. One thing I would suggest is that if you are the one with the jumper cables, I would man them myself. I wouldn't let somebody else just take them and do that. Like, if they're using my car, no problem, I'll jump you, but I'm going to put them on mine and yours and then get them off when I'm done. Remember to start on the live vehicle and go to the dead and then do it in reverse. But get a pair of jumper cables. Also, make sure your cables, they will wear out over time. Just, I know I had a really old set at one point. They're kind of getting frayed. And I went and got some new ones. The new ones they weren't that expensive, but just for safety precautions, I don't know whether I'd say there, maybe, I'm sure it's probably 15 or 20 years, but just like I said, sometimes these are things that get handed down from like father to son, or, uncle to nephew, or neighbor to neighbor. Anyway, and who knows how old those things are. So just make sure that, you've got a decent new set that's got plenty of insulation around the cable. So that way, you're not shocking yourself to death. A roadside kit, just a basic roadside kit. And it's going to have, if you want to add to it, that's cool. I would say just anything you can get, even, Walmart or AutoZone or O'Reilly's. It's going to have probably like some reflectors in there. It may have a flashlight, just basic things that if you have a problem on the side of the road, these things are helpful to you. Just throw it in. If there are other things you see in there that you need that you don't have, go grab those. An air compressor. Typically these things are, they're pretty small, and just having even the ability to like give yourself some air if you had it flat on the side of the road, that can help in that at least you're getting, further down the road, or maybe you can get somewhere where you can really deal with it. Maybe, in the best case scenario, it's a slow leak. You're able to air your tire back up to get to a tire repair place or a mechanic, and then get that solved, with an actual kit, right? So it's actually plugged up. But if you can at least give yourself a little more time, that's definitely something that will be helpful. Water. I've gotten to where I keep a jug of water in my vehicle all the time. For a lot of times for me, it's just going to the gym, but I just keep it in there anyway. So I've got it, and that's come in handy before. Just, we're somewhere and we're kind of stuck for a bit, just having some water. But yeah, if you're definitely on the side of the road, like on a trip, and you have issues, having some water is going to go a long way. And then power cables for your phone. This seems, most of us have these in our vehicle anyway at this point, but I would just say, making sure you've got them for the different options. If you've got it for USB, making sure you've got one as well that would work into a cigarette lighter, because usually the vehicles these days still have that. Just or even some of them now have regular plugs, right? But just anyway, making sure you've got a couple of different options to get your phone charged up. So kind of back to that point in the original question on Reddit, what would you get, or what did you wish you had, in 2530? So I don't know if this would have been my answer at that point. Definitely not the Tesla piece, because they weren't around yet. But what I would look for today is a resto mod, and I'll show one real quick. This is a really cool company. If you've never seen these before, Icon. I would probably look for something like this, like an older vehicle that they put the new tech in. These are super expensive though. I think they end up being like $100,000 when all said and done, because they go into real detail. Like they put a lot of coatings on the chassis. I mean, they strip it down to like, the chassis, and then sandblast it and put coatings on it. It's just, everything's basically like new. But I just think that kind of concept is really cool. And the other thing is that, like I said, a Tesla. I've just heard the accelerator. I've not driven one yet. I've heard the acceleration with electric is just insane because you have instant torque. So I'd at least check that out. What else we got? Something interesting, and then a song recommendation. So we're wrapping up here. The interesting thing, I remember growing up and, going skiing and water skiing. And one of the things being that nope, sharks don't live in lakes, so you're safe. Sharks only live in oceans and the salt water. But bull sharks can live in rivers, in fresh water. In fact, they have been found as far up the Mississippi as Illinois. So that'll probably fuel a few nightmares. But, that was an interesting piece. And then song recommendation. This is by a guy named Arlo McKinley. And the name of the song is Bag of Pills. I would 1000% recommend this particular version of it. This Summer Sessions on YouTube. I don't know if it's available for download, but man, it's just really, well, there's the download button there, but download on your phone, like put in your Apple Music and stuff. It's really good. So give that a shot. Check him out. And we will leave it there. Car topics, something interesting, and then a song recommendation. If you have any other car topics that you would recommend, throw them in the comments below. Definitely love to hear what you had to say. And if you have any, actually, if you've heard Arlo McKinley, drop some comments down there as well for that too. All right, have an awesome day.